Hey Optimancers, Chris here. Have you ever played a Druid in D&D? What do you think about Wild Shape? In my experience, the value of Wild Shape depends wildly on some unfortunate factors. Assuming we're hoping to take advantage of Wild Shape in combat, a Moon Druid is going to find Wild Shape incredibly powerful at level 2, but those returns are diminishing as we increase in level. In the case of any other kind of Druid, we might be able to use Wild Shape in combat at level 2 with some very so-so results, but it's going to become nearly useless in combat within a couple levels, certainly by 5th level. In order to address this, we've seen some modifications to how Druid subclasses tend to be designed. In fact, the last 3 subclasses for Druid, the Spore, Wildfire, and Stars Druid, have all been given alternate uses for the ability. And in Tasha's we were also given an alternate use for the ability as an optional class feature, which as a player I'm hungry for, since I know the standard use isn't often going to be used to great effect, and to a large degree I've been pleased to see the alterations with how the subclasses of Druids are designed, because without a useful alternate use of Wild Shape, Druids tend to feel less unique from other spellcasting classes. It's unfortunate, though, that Wild Shape just doesn't really work. 2nd level Moon Druids are way too powerful, but the power progression is far different from other classes, and they can expect to see that advantage dissolve as levels increase, while other Druids are suffering at that 2nd level, only reaching the level of other subclasses once the 3rd level spells are in play. Even more unfortunate is the idea of a wild-shaping Druid turning into some kind of fierce animal is iconic from past iterations of the game of D&D, and now it's even more iconic with wild-shaped Druids being featured in video gaming as well. But coming back to the D&D wild-shaped Druid, the mechanics are clunky, they're poorly balanced, and they often pigeonhole even the Moon Druid into some very limited choices. Today I want to address that, and I want to provide an alternate that DMs and players might consider as a way to make this feature work more smoothly in their games. Before I go into the details, I would like to take a moment to thank some of the patrons of this channel. Patrons help me produce this content and gain access to early ad-free releases of these videos. My top level patrons can join me for some D&D on a monthly basis. Please check the link in the video description to my Patreon page if you would be interested in supporting what I do. Today I would like to thank Airhead, Awesome Face, Ben Potts, Black, Bloody Nine, CJ, Cass Byrne, Christian Wyndham, and Christopher Gutseat. Thank you so much for your continued support. So let's get started. When I look at Wild Shape now, after a number of years of 5th edition developments, I see a number of problems. The first is that they never really figured out how to make the challenge rating limitation work. For a Moon Druid, for example, accessing a CR1 creature at 2nd level is massive, but when we get to 6th level, we find that CR2 is not dramatically better than CR1, and we have waited 4 levels for that advancement. Also, by entering you into the ability at CR1, we skip over a number of creatures that we might have thought were narratively good choices, like wolves, gorillas, crocodiles, anacondas. We see level limitations limit this further, since by the time we get access to flying creatures, we find that our flying creature options just aren't tough enough to be considerations in combat. For non-Moon Druids, at level 2 becoming a wolf in combat is a so-so option, but you can potentially make it work. But by the time we get access to CR1 creatures at level 8, that CR increase is hardly relevant, because wild shaping in combat becomes this universally terrible option that only gets worse as we increase in level. And then we look at our capstone, one might wonder what the point is, since we're unlikely to be using our wild shape much at all anyways. Now, we can use that wild shape for utility, but it's a pretty limited utility, and it's the kind of utility that we might be able to duplicate with other features, like the Find Familiar spell that we could do instead of Wild Shape now. For Moon Druids, what we tend to see are the same creatures over and over again. As the player has looked for what creature might be worth wild shaping into, and they've determined that there's not much reason to wild shape into a tiger when a brown bear hits harder and has multi-attack. And I mean, ideally, we really don't even want the players diving into the monster stats, do we? Isn't the whole idea that the monster manual and those kinds of books are for DMs and not for players to browse through? This makes abilities for PCs that require a player to access these books go against that very principle. This isn't even just about optimization either, since any player must know the CR of the available creatures to even know what's available to choose. The more I play with Druids, both as a player and as a DM, the more these drawbacks of this iconic class feature stand out to me as something that should have been done differently. Wild Shape, however, wasn't unique with this problem. Beastmaster Rangers needed to pick a companion, summoned casters would sometimes pick the creature summoned, and the same was true of spells like Polymorph that changed the form of a creature. In all these cases, the rules required that the player go through the monster manual or like book and make decisions. And again, ideally, we really don't want the players to be browsing through the DM books. However, since the player's handbook, we have now seen a change to how these spells and features are designed. In Tasha's, we see summoning spells now using templates. We see the Beastmaster Ranger's Companion now using templates. But for some reason, the Druid has gotten skipped. But would a template work for Wild Shape? Let's go through and consider what that might do. So, number one, we could now have complete control over the power of the feature, ensuring that when it's first received, it's an appropriate ability for the level, but also ensuring it never becomes an obsolete feature. Number two is, we could allow players to choose narratively appropriate forms without being punished for choosing that form. The third thing is, we can prevent the requirement for players to be analyzing aspects of the game they shouldn't be having access to. The fourth is, we can remove the design issue of needing to consider whether any published beast in future publications might be abusable by the Wild Shape feature. And the fifth thing is, we can create some internal design consistency between similar features like summoning spells or a Beastmaster's Animal Companion. Now I think for the same reasons they were initially imposed, the limit to non-flying creatures before level 8 and non-swimming creatures before level 4 remain appropriate. So what would our Wild Shape end up looking like? Well, I think we need more than one template, as we've seen in similar features, because Wild Shape is a more central design feature of the Druid, and also a Druid should be able to access larger forms as levels increase as well. Like with Beastmaster Companions, or with new summoning spells, I think also this should be an option for players and DMs. I would treat this like an optional class feature, one that the Druid player can choose instead of Wild Shape as presented in the player's handbook. So what I've done is I put together a draft that does just that. So feel free to use this if you like. You feel free to use anything you see here in this video. And if you're a patron, you can get a copy of this on the Patreon page. So this is my proposed change to the Druid Wild Shape feature. So the Druid in the player's handbook can magically assume the form of a beast they've seen before. As an alternative, a Druid can take the feature below to gain a unique kind of shape-changing ability. Beast form is gained at 2nd level and it replaces Wild Shape. Now in a lot of ways it works just like Wild Shape. You can use your action to magically assume the form of a beast, you can do it twice, you regain expended uses when you finish a short or long rest, and your Druid level is going to determine the types of beasts you can transform into, as shown in the beast form table. At 2nd level, for example, you can transform into any beast using the Scout or Hunter template. So this is the beast form table. You can see at 2nd level you become a Scout or Hunter, 4th level Scout, Hunter, or Giant Arachnid, and at 8th level Scout, Hunter, Giant Arachnid, or Predator. And in all of these cases there are going to be selections within the template that you can make to customize it further. Just like with Wild Shape, you can stay in that form a number of hours equal to half your Druid level rounded down. You then revert to your normal form unless you expend another use of the feature. You can revert to your normal form earlier by using a bonus action on your turn, but if you do so, you lose any temporary hit points granted by the feature. You automatically revert if you lose all the temporary hit points granted by the feature or die. This feature is treated as Wild Shape in regards to determining subclass abilities that use or alter Wild Shape. Once you're transformed, the following rules apply, and most of these are the same as with Wild Shape. There's a couple changes. The first that will change is that now you'll keep your Druid Constitution score along with your Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma scores. Also, you're going to gain temporary hit points, and those will be specified in the Beast Form template, and those will be based on your Druid level, so it is going to scale with your level. Spells are treated exactly the same as they were with Wild Shape. Just like with Wild Shape, you can retain the benefit of features from your class, race, or other sources and use them in your new form as long as it's physically capable of doing so. And as with Wild Shape, any special senses like Dark Vision are replaced. Unlike with Wild Shape, you cannot choose between having your equipment merge or not merge. Now it's automatically going to merge, and the reason for that is for balance. These templates are assuming no magical equipment. And then I had to make a couple specific changes to Moon Druids. So the Moon Druid is going to remain the same except for two features, Circle Forms and Elemental Form. Neither of those work with this new Beast Form feature. Circle Forms now, what it's going to do is when you take a Beast Form, your natural attacks will do an additional die of damage when you use them. The Moon Druid is no longer taking different forms than other Druids. It's just that the forms they take are more dangerous. Second thing is the Elemental Form. There's going to be a specific template for Elemental Form, and it is featured below as well. Otherwise, Elemental Form, just like before, is going to require two uses of your Wild Shape feature. So the first form is our Scout form. So this is our utility form. And before we might have changed into a rat, or at a higher level we might have changed into a smaller bird. And this is going to basically allow us to do the same thing. Just like before, we may choose a climbing creature, we may choose a swimming creature, we may choose a flying creature, and some of those are going to be level dependent, and they still are. And one thing I've added here is the naturally stealthy trait. So while you are in a scout form, you will have advantage on your stealth checks. You will have a natural attack, it's a scratch, it's terrible, it does 1 point of damage. Probably shouldn't worry too much about it. Second form is the hunter form. So this would be our first combat form. This would be gained at second level, but it will scale with our level. You're going to be able to choose a small or medium beast, and you're going to be able to choose a beast that has a climb speed, a swim speed, or a fly speed, and some of those are level dependent. We're going to gain hit points equal to 5 times our Druid level in temporary hit points. So that's a reasonable amount of temporary hit points. And we're going to have a feature for our form based on the kind of creature we chose. So it might be amphibious, gaining a swim speed and the ability to breathe air and water. It might be flyby, the ability to not provoke opportunity attacks when the Druid flies out of the enemy's reach. Or it may be pack tactics. So then we would get advantage on attack rolls against creature if we have an ally within 5 feet of that creature. Another thing that's going to happen is we're going to get multi-attack. This is going to be something, again, that scales with level. When we use this at level 2, we're not getting any additional attacks, but we're going to get 2 attacks at level 5, 3 attacks at level 11, and 4 attacks at level 17. Also, the actual attack is going to scale with our level as well. That's a maul. It's going to do 2d6 plus wisdom, piercing, or bludgeoning damage, and it's going to use our spell attack modifier to hit. So, assuming our spell attack modifier is scaling, that means this attack will scale, and if our wisdom modifier goes up, it will scale as well. But the main scaling will, of course, be we're going to be getting additional attacks with additional levels. Now, for a Moon Druid, it's going to be doing 3d6 plus wisdom, and that is going to put this far more in line with what I call the baseline damage. Hunter form in a non-Moon Druid is probably going to be a little bit below the baseline, though not horribly below the baseline. It's probably something you could still do as a backup, though it's likely not going to be the main thing you do. If it is the main thing you do, you should probably be playing a Moon Druid anyway. Then at 4th level, we're going to get access to the giant Arachnid form. So this is our giant spider, and that's going to give us a spider climb ability and a web walker ability so that we don't have movement restrictions when moving through webbing. And then we're going to get a bite attack that does some poison damage, and assuming the creature we're fighting isn't immune to poison, the giant arachnid form will do more damage overall than the hunter form. And we're going to get a web attack, and that web attack is very similar to the giant spider web attack, except again there's going to be scaling with our level. Our chance to hit will scale, and the escape DC is going to scale as well. So this will remain relevant, unlike a giant spider that eventually becomes irrelevant. Then at 8th level, we're going to get access to the Predator form. This is our big creatures. So the Predator form can be large or huge if we're at least level 11 in Druid, or gargantuan if we're at least level 17 in Druid, and that's your choice. It's going to have a higher armor class. It's going to have more temporary hit points than the other forms gave. It has a faster speed, and it's going to have a charge attack. And that charge attack, the way it works is if the Druid moves at least 20 feet straight towards an enemy, it may immediately make a gore or stomp attack against any creature if the Druid moved through their space during this movement. On a hit, it must succeed on a strength saving throw against your spell save DC or be knocked prone. So the idea is if you are, say, huge, you can move through squares of creatures that are medium-sized or smaller. So you'd be able to move through them and get these charge attacks through them. So it gives you an advantage to being bigger. And then our actual attack, like with the other forms, it's going to scale with multi-attack at the same rate. And we're going to get a gore or stomp attack. This does more damage than the Arachnid did, and it's going to allow you to make a grapple attempt using your bonus action if the target is no larger than the Druid on a hit. So offensively, this is our best form. Defensively, our best form is actually the Elemental form, and this of course is only available to Moon Druids at level 10. This one is going to have as good an armor class as any of them, but the hit points are significantly higher, including higher than the Predator form. Also with our speed, there's a lot of versatility there because you can get burrow, fly, or swim depending on the form you chose. We're going to get a ton of damage resistances, we're going to get damage immunities, we're going to get condition immunities, we're going to get the amorphous form if we're air, fire, or water, or earth glide if we're earth. And so there is a lot of versatility in terms of movement, and there's a lot of defensive boosts over the Predator form. Now there still might be reason why we might want to use the Predator form as a Moon Druid, because offensively it is still going to be the bigger bang for our buck. Damage is the same on attacks, but with that charge we can expect the opportunity to potentially do more damage. And we're going to have that potential bonus action grapple, which we should have a reasonable chance at because we are going to be working off a high strength score. So the idea of this is that a Moon Druid, when they get to 10th level, will be drawn to the Elemental form for all the defensive boosts of it and all the maneuverability boosts of it, but they still might want to use the Predator form just because offensively it's still the best bet. And we're going to have a little bit more versatility in the forms we take. So that is my proposed change to Wild Shape. And thank you to the members of my Discord community who helped me with this, and thanks to my patrons who helped me with this, because there was a number of iterations before this version that I've presented to you today. And although these have been evaluated, these have not been playtested. So you might find that you need to boost the damages a bit, or maybe even reduce the damages a bit, or give different options to different forms. But I think this is a pretty good starting point, and I think I'm pretty confident already that this is a superior version to what you have in the Player's Handbook. So I hope that this gives you some ideas, and as I said, if you're a patron and you want a copy of this, I have it available on my Patreon, and I'd love to know what you think about it, so let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.